As spooks, we are more sinners than saints. I was informed that they get so much money from Pakistan. I said, what's the big deal? I mean, if they get so much money from Pakistan, I'm sure the Indian state can afford more than that.
You called Ajit Doval a complete spook.
Absolutely.
What is the one thing that Mr. Doval, you think, without giving away any sensitive details, would be willing to risk that you would not?
He'd be willing to risk everything. There's a gambler's instinct in him. And he's much more ruthless. Left to Ajit, he knows where the solution lies. If I claim that I know where the solution lies, I can tell you, Ajit, with his feet firmly on the ground, knows much better where the solution lies. And the solution to Kashmir lies somewhere in those three families.
You mean the Abdullahs, the Muftis and the Loans? Or the Mirwais Omar Farooq?
No.
Which is the third family that I have missed?
The Congress family.
The Congress family.
Congress family. The Gandhis, let's say.
My guest today has been the former head of R&AW, the Research and Analysis Wing of India. He's one of the country's best known spooks, and he's also known for his blunt, controversial, often unusual approaches to intelligence gathering, and in particular to a subject that's been close to his heart for many decades, Kashmir. A.S Dulat is just out with his memoirs, and as you can expect, it's rather deliciously indiscreet. Called A Life in the Shadows, Mr. Dulat shines a light on many key episodes of his life and the characters he encountered, including an entire chapter on the present National Security Advisor, Ajit Doval. Dulat Sahab, it's good to see you after a long time.
Always a delight talking to you, being with you.
One of the things that struck me as I read this book is that you haven't given up one of your most controversial beliefs. And that belief was articulated in your earlier book as well, that you have to sometimes use money and friendship to engage with those who are working against the nation. You talk a lot about, for example, separatist Shabir Shah in this book, your attempts to turn him around, how you would even encourage separatists to drop by unannounced, uninvited at your house for a cup of tea. In your previous book, you had famously said, corrupting someone with money is better than killing them. And you got a whole lot of flack at that time for saying that. You've stuck to that view, that it's okay, the job of a spook is to engage and engage by any means. In today's environment, do you think there'll be any takers for this belief?
I think the takers have increased, if anything, and we must remember that as spooks, we are not saints. We are more sinners than saints. So I think this whole business about money is used all over the world, in corrupting people, in winning over people, in agent running. Money is the main.
But why spend money on those who are essentially in bed with Pakistan?
Let me explain this to you, how the idea of money came to me. I'm not a moneyed person, and I don't throw around money. But, when I was involved with Kashmir many years, and I started dealing with the separatists, I was informed that they get so much money from Pakistan. I said, what's the big deal? I mean, if they get so much money from Pakistan, I'm sure the Indian state can afford more than that. So we'll increase on that, and then let us see. And so that's how it happened. I don't think that's should be so surprising.
There are people who don't belong to the world of sleuthing who might ask you a very commonsensical question.
Sure.
And they would say, Mr. Dulat, why should the Indian state spend money on those who also take money from Pakistan, who have links to terror groups? Why are we spending money on these people?
See, it's like this. When you're trying to turn around people, and like you said, who are working for Pakistan, then possibly it requires a little more investment. Today we've reached a stage in Kashmir where even the mainstream is suspect, or people look at them with suspicion. It's very sad. Because what has happened over the years is that, and this I think has been what India has been trying to do in Kashmir since '47, is to mainstream Kashmir, mainstream the leadership, get Pakistan out of their mind. And I think we've succeeded to a very, very large extent.
Have you succeeded?
You know, the mainstream is over, it's finished. There is no mainstream. I mean, I beg your pardon, there's no separatism left. There's one Mirwais who sits in his house, who's been under house arrest. And I think he's sufficiently mainstreamed. If given an opportunity, I think he might contest the next election.
You think the Mirwais Omar Farooq, if given a chance, would be willing to contest an election?
Why not? Why not?
He's never done it so far. These attempts have been made in the past.
Yeah, they have been made. I was a part of those attempts. I'll be very honest with you. In 2002, in fact, I had a long conversation at that time, or conversations for many, many days.
To try and convince him to contest?
With Lone Saab. And Lone Saab used to say to me that I am too old now. I am too old, but I will help you. And he used to keep hinting and indicating that our main target should be the Mirwais.
But let me ask you this, after all these years of...
And I have had another theory. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I said at the time of the 2002 election that maybe it's time for Kashmir to have a national government of youngsters involving the separatists. And I mentioned the Mirwais, and I mentioned Sajjad Lone, and I, of course, mentioned Omar Abdullah, and I mentioned Mehbooba.
So hang on, in the post-abrogation 370 Kashmir, or abrogation of 370 Kashmir, we're in a very different context.
Yeah.
Let me first ask you, all these years of the Indian state covertly helping with medical bills, for example, of a Sayyid Ali Shah Gilani, even engaging at some covert level with Sayyid Salahuddin, who heads the Hizbul Mujahideen and has been in Pakistan for decades. What has it got people like you who believe that engagement is preferable to open hostility? What has it achieved?
We got Majid Dar across. I hope nobody's forgotten that. And I thought that was a very big catch for the intelligence agencies. Because, although he was regarded as the 2IC to Salahuddin, he was really the brains behind the Hizbul Mujahideen. And he was willing to come across, and he was willing to join in the peace
And you had
process.
Talks with him at the Nehru guest house.
He was willing to help in
But the entire faction of the Hizbul Mujahideen that came across and engaged with the Indian state was eliminated.
That's right. That's right. That's unfortunate that Majid was killed. Because I feel and I believe that if he had survived, maybe we were not good enough in protecting him. I believe that if he had survived, he would have helped in the political process. He would have helped in engagement. He would have helped in negotiations. As you know, the Home Secretary of India went up to Srinagar to meet with his
I remember covering those talks, but I want to ask you, how do you trust an asset who's taking money both from you and the Pakistanis?
Well, that depends on the asset, and it depends on the handling officer, how much trust you have. I've engaged with the Mirwais. I don't know what he gets from Pakistan or what he doesn't get. And I've engaged with the Mirwais, and he's been very honest very open with me.
So you do not...
he doesn't say a lot of things which he has said to me in public. But for instance, I believe the ideal combination in Kashmir today would be a combination of the two Omars,
Mirwais Omar Farooq and Omar Abdullah.
And Omar Abdullah, it's the best combination.
So you do not regret...
With Mehbooba, why not?
You do not regret having used financial resources of the Indian state to engage with both separatists and militants?
Not in the least. And
I'm asking the question.
I'm answering your question. Do you believe that people are not being paid today? Political parties have been set up in the mainstream. You know that.
Let's talk about today. What you've described is the Dulat doctrine. Today Kashmir is directed by the Doval doctrine.
Fair enough.
And there is a chapter
And I
on Mr.
admit
Doval.
that the Doval doctrine is always superior to my doctrine.
What makes it superior? What makes the Doval doctrine superior to the Dulat doctrine?
Because he is a better spook than I am.
In what way?
In every way. He is the complete spook.
Give me an example of that.
Because he can do whatever I've done, and much more than that. You know, the muscular, this thing that, muscular policy that has been followed in Kashmir post 2019 is, I think, Ajit's idea, and I think it has worked to a large extent.
Even though you're ideologically opposed to it, you believe it's worked?
Of course. You know, this is the whole thing. There was a lot of ruckus about the last chapter in this book. I think people missed the main idea. The main idea in that last chapter, if you read it properly, was the point I was trying to make is that we can differ, we can disagree, but we can still be friends. And we have worked together and we understand each other.
So the last chapter in this book for the audience is a chapter on the National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, and it's filled with really, really interesting detail, including a fascinating story about how during Operation Black Thunder, you actually say that Ajit Doval poses as a rickshawala with links to the ISI and manages to get inside the Golden Temple complex. Speak a little bit about this completely fascinating nugget of history.
You see, the point is, I don't know the truth. This is part of the Doval legend, and the legend is being built. You know, the legend is not over yet. But whether he was masquerading as a rickshaw puller or not, I wouldn't know. But this much I'm sure of, that he played a very key role in Black Thunder, in getting intelligence out of the Golden Temple, however he did it. And as you know, he got the Kirti Chakra for that, which no other intelligence officer has got. So he has done things which are quite remarkable. Now, if he actually posed as an ISI agent and got inside there, I think that's unique in the history of Indian spooking. You know?
In some ways, you say he's like you. In the book, you say, in the way that he's ready to be unconventional. He's ready to take risk. He doesn't really...
Much more than me, much more than me.
What do you think is the riskiest thing Mr. Doval has done?
No, I don't want to get into those things. There are certain things that we don't talk about. But I have mentioned, and that is that, you know, we worked together on Kashmir. I was at headquarters and he was posted in Srinagar, and we worked together. We worked very closely. Now, his ways are very different from mine, and I knew that.
What's the biggest difference between Ajit Doval and A.S Dulat?
Because I'm quite open about things. You know, like you said, I invite everybody. Everybody knows. I mean, most people disapproved of my ways of getting people into my house. You know, they said, we have other places for you to meet.
Safe houses and so on.
Safe houses. Why are you getting people home? But I thought it was the best way of winning trust, you know. If Shabir started visiting our little small place, a D2 flat in Kidwainagar, obviously he felt more reassured.
But you also allude to the fact that you think that the Muftis, Mehbooba Mufti and the PDP, could have been a project that was supported by Mr. Ajit Doval back in the day.
Now, let me tell you very, very honestly, when it happened, I'd never thought about it. And if somebody had told me in 2002 that this is Mr. Doval's project, I wouldn't have believed.
Today?
Today, that story lingers, you know. And now I'm hearing it increasingly from Kashmiris.
What do you think?
I don't want to name names. And these include some people who were in the PDP or are in the PDP or whatever it is, that there were people from Delhi who encouraged us. They may not name names, but obviously there was a hint that Ajit may have helped in it. I don't know. I can't either accuse him or give him credit for it. But what is for sure is that, and I mentioned that in the book as well, that, you know, it's the coincidence that when Farooq came back to power for the third time in 1996, it was exactly the same time that Ajit Doval was posted to Srinagar. So I suggested to him, I said, I have been called, invited for the swearing in Why don't you come along with me? It'll be the best introduction for you with the new chief minister. And he came. And I took him straight to Gupkar Road, introduced him to Farooq, and I said, this is our best intelligence officer that we are sending here. But the chemistry didn't work.
Ajit Doval and Farooq Abdullah.
Yeah, it didn't work. You know, they are different types of people. It's not easy to get along with Farooq, incidentally. You know, and it's not easy to get along with Ajit Doval also. You have to know. So he found it easier to drift towards Mufti Sahib. And that's where the story begins, about the possibility of his involvement in helping in the PDP. I don't think he was in a position to really be instrumental, but yeah, we all have our likes and dislikes. And in 2002, I can say, or between 96 and 2002, Ajit was much closer to Mufti Sahib than to Farooq Abdullah, and I was much closer to Farooq than to Mufti Sahib. But we all had to deal with everybody.
Well, a lot of water has flown, in the Jhelum since then.
Yeah.
Here's the question. You called Ajit Doval a complete spook.
Absolutely.
What is the one thing that Mr. Doval, you think, without giving away any sensitive details, would be willing to risk that you would not?
He'd be willing to risk everything. There's a gambler's instinct in him, and he's much more ruthless about doing things. You know, I still hold back. It's not that we don't play tricks. All spooks play tricks, but my tricks are quite open. And you know,
do you consider him a friend today?
Ajit, a very good friend. I don't know what he thinks about me. I think Ajit, he's always been a good friend. I mean, we worked together. You know.
There's been a paradigm shift in...
You know, when he set up the Vivekananda Foundation, let me tell you, he invited 4 or 5 of us for lunch and wanted to know how to get this thing moving forward. And we had lunch together. And I said, Ajit, anything that you do will move forward automatically. And look where the Vivekananda Foundation has gone. Yeah?
He's instrumental in bringing a paradigm shift in how the Kashmir issue is thought of today. And you talk about this in the book. At one point he says...
I don't believe that this is the way Ajit would like it to play out.
You don't think this is his Kashmir doctrine?
I don't think that he is in complete control politically.
Explain that.
That is that I think... And this is a question I was asked the other day, that is the situation irretrievable in Kashmir? I said it is not irretrievable. Kashmir is never irretrievable. I think the script is very clear. You know, this is the way you should go about it. And I think Ajit is smart enough to understand that.
But when you say...
But why is he not doing that?
But when you say that you don't think...
And he's not doing that because of the fact that there are also people in the government who say that we want to finish these 3 families. And the solution to Kashmir lies somewhere in those 3 families.
You mean the Abdullahs, the Muftis and the Loans? Or the Mirwais Omar Farooq?
No.
Which is the 3rd family that I have missed?
The Congress family.
The Congress family.
Congress family. The Gandhis, let's say.
Here's my question. You believe that left to himself, as was given his training as a spook, Mr. Doval would not like to see a complete shutdown of dialogue in Kashmir as we saw in the aftermath of the abrogation.
Left to Ajit, he knows where the solution lies. If I claim that I know where the solution lies, I can tell you Ajit, with his feet firmly on the ground, knows much better where the solution lies.
But let's also acknowledge...
Why he's not following that, I don't know.
Because the political environment has changed. The fact is that even political parties that would have been softer on Kashmir today would not take that view. There is a larger public opinion that any government has to be mindful of.
But the public opinion has been created by the government. The public opinion on Kashmir, I don't think the public knows very much about Kashmir. You know, it's all right to go on holiday in Gulmarg and Pahalgam, but what do people in Delhi know about Kashmir? How many people go there and feel for Kashmir or get even a feeling of Kashmir? I was there in June, earlier this year in the summer, and I was surprised that the situation has come to such a pass that Kashmiri now says we expect nothing from Delhi. It's over. But it's never over. It's not over.
The response to the abrogation was quite muted on the streets of the valley. There was, of course, a clampdown. There's also an argument, as several separatists would argue, this is a constitutional debate within India. There could be many reasons why it was muted. My question is this: what do you see happening next in Kashmir?
You see, Kashmiris want or crave peace more than anything else. They want out. They've had more than enough years of militancy, hardship, loss of employment, everything. Everything has gone wrong for Kashmir. They want out. But they want out with dignity, you know. And that if we are a part of India, then why don't you treat us like the rest of India?
But look what's happening with the Pandits today. It's turned full circle. You have the Pandits who were, taken back as part of a special government employment program on protest for weeks altogether, saying we cannot be forced to work here. We do not feel safe. Targeted killings of minorities continues. Religious minorities in Kashmir continues. The Lieutenant Governor is now talking about no salaries for those who are not showing up at work. So I just wonder where you get your optimism that nothing is irretrievable, because this is a government that actually gave its word to protect the Pandits. And the Pandits have been on dharna, notwithstanding...
Which government?
I'm saying the BJP's commitment has been...
No government, I'm sorry to say, no government since the early 1990s. Every government has talked about it, but no government has really tried to get the Kashmiri Pandits back to Kashmir. And the way to get the Kashmiri Pandit back to Kashmir is to get the Kashmiris involved in that process. Not by setting up colonies for them, not by giving them special employment and this. It'll never work. You get the Mirwais to invite the Kashmiri Pandits. You get Mehbooba to invite the Kashmiri Pandits, and yes, it might start happening. You see, what you talked of killings. Yeah, there have been targeted killings. And then we come to the question of Kashmiriyat, which is oft raised. Does Kashmiriyat exist? And I've always argued, and some Pandits have agreed, some Pandits have disagreed. But there are enough Pandits who agree that Kashmiriyat will never die in Kashmir. So if Kashmiriyat doesn't die in Kashmir, then surely somebody should be able to devise ways of getting the Kashmiri Pandits back. Otherwise, these targeted killings, I don't think, in all these years, if you look back and think back, when have they been targeted? There are Kashmiri Pandits who stayed back in the valley, and they have not been targeted. They have not been killed.
Well, we've had...
Vijay Dhar has been there. He set up a Delhi public school, and he's doing extremely well. I don't think he faces a threat from anybody.
You can't say that the Pandits are not vulnerable. We have seen a spate of killings in the last year that are targeted in the non-Muslim locals and migrant workers even from states like Bihar.
That's right, that's right. That is because of the fact that every now and then we raise this question of a demographic change in Kashmir. Why do we need to do that? No? Even if that is a project in hand or a project being thought of, surely it can be done in more sophisticated ways than making announcements. Now the Kashmiri Pandits' ultimate fear, and this is it's not post 2019. Let me clarify this. I heard this at least 20, 25 years ago when I was still around, that one day we will be reduced to a minority in our own state.
Yeah, the Kashmiri Muslims fear, you mean. Let's
But
come...
Kashmir is Muslim, no? It is 95 or 98% Muslim.
Which doesn't mean it's not the homeland of the Pandits, but let's come back to the book. Let's come back to the book because...
No, I don't disagree with you. Of course it is the homeland
No,
of the Kashmir.
I think the disagreement is what should happen with the Pandits. I mean, can the Pandits be...
I feel the Pandits must go back. I agree.
But they can't be there against their will. Right now they're being made to work against their will there.
So that is why I said, Barkha, that is not the way to do it.
Right. So I want to
Why
come...
don't you remember once Shabir Shah went out to the camps in Jammu. I don't know how sincere he was, but he did go and say, we want you Pandits back. I think the Mirwais would still be prepared to lead the way.
Let's come back to the book. You talk a lot about many characters, but also Farooq Abdullah, whom you've got to know very well over the years.
So I hope.
So you hope. Now, in your opinion, given everything that has been said and done, the house arrests, now the release, a certain amount of political activity is back in Kashmir. We can probably expect statehood to be restored, elections to be held. Do you believe that the National Conference could consider working with the BJP again?
I think the answer lies in two things. One is an election and what kind of result it produces. And second is, is the BJP prepared to extend its hand to Farooq Abdullah or to Umar Abdullah?
And if it were?
Then who knows what might happen.
Over the years, there's been a certain degree of, sometimes, tension between the two generations of the Abdullah family. I even remember long back covering...
Let's make that, I've got your point, let's make that very clear.
Yeah.
And as long as Farooq is around, and I hope he's around for a long time, there's nobody in Kashmir who can claim to be anywhere close to him. Yet, the son has a role. If there were to be a national conference government, it will be Umar Abdullah who will be chief minister. So that is his role. But managing the party, running the party, getting to people, there's nobody. Farooq is head and shoulders above everybody. And the Kashmiri leadership today, to ask anybody in Kashmir who is honest, they will admit to this, that there is nobody of Farooq's stature around. Now, Sajjad has left the PHGD.
The group of parties working together.
Before he left the PHGD, I don't want to say too much because Sajjad is an old friend, but he had lunch with me and he was so impressed with Farooq. He says, this is a new, reincarnation. He is so sort of obsessed with Kashmir and getting Kashmir back on the rails.
Let me ask you this before we move away from Kashmir. If you had lunch with your old friend, good friend, Ajit Doval, and you had to give...
I've had lunch with him many times.
When was the most recent time?
No, unfortunately...
So if you were to, in the next few days, have lunch with him, and prescriptively give him your counsel on Kashmir to do one thing, what would that one thing be?
I told you, he knows better than me. He knows what to do.
Which is?
I don't need to teach him how to suck eggs, He knows better. He can teach me a hell of a lot. He knows what is to be done. Yeah, but if he once did ask me long ago, what should we do on Kashmir? He especially called me to the PMO and said, what should we do on Kashmir? I think that was when the muscular policy was evolving in his mind. And I said, Ajit, you know me. I'm very clear. Engage, talk, meet. He said, no, bahut ho gaya. Ab danda lagayenge. Maine kaha, lagao danda.
I think at some point in the book you say he's the danda and you're the carrot.
That's what Mr. Narayanan once said, that if
there was a carrot and stick policy, then Doval is the stick and Dulat is the carrot.
Yeah, he would send us there alternately.
Let me end from the book with something not connected with Kashmir or politics. Prince Charles. or King Charles now.
King Charles.
And you spend a reasonable amount of time with him, 12 days.
Wonderful days.
Looking after him when he comes to India. And you describe a lunch that Charles has with Indira Gandhi where he comes away singularly uncharmed. So talk about that.
I don't know about the lunch because I was only outside hanging around with the High Commissioner. Obviously, you know, it was a family lunch, and I think Mrs. Gandhi did it the right way. That she had just a family, herself and Rajiv and Sonia and Manika, and there was Charles. And probably she had nothing to say to him, you know. What do you say to a youngster? He was about 32 that time. And Mrs. Gandhi had this thing about youngsters. They need to be kept in their place. I mean, it was the same with the King of Nepal, you know. I used to be in Kathmandu. And whenever King Birendra came here, in the streets of Kathmandu, I would hear the Nepali say, "Ke mummy ne bulaya hai." So they knew that Mrs. Gandhi meant business, and she didn't waste her time on kids.
And he comes out and says?
He comes out, and John Thompson said, "Your Highness, how did the lunch go?" He says, "Don't ask me. I met people all over the world, but this woman freezes you, you know."
Well, there are many
She could freeze you and she could charm you.
She could freeze you and she could charm you. And I think Henry Kissinger would testify to that in the writings that he had about Indira Gandhi.
That's right.
But A.S. Dulat's memoir, A Life in the Shadows, is out. There's a lot more that we couldn't cover, so do pick up your copy. You may not agree with A.S. Dulat, but you will always find yourself either wanting to argue with him or it gets you thinking, and that's what a good book is all about. Thank you, Dulat Saab. Pleasure as always.
Thanks, Barkha.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure to talk to you. A delight, as I said.
Thank you, sir. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.